Hi everyone, this is Lean and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. Today I'm creating this Slimline card using the View from My Window Slimline die, the Let's Curl Up and Winter Wreath stamp set by My Favorite Things. Before I'm going to color anything, I'm first starting on my background. So I have die cut the View from My Window Slimline die by Crafty Meraki out of Strathmore Bristol Smooth. This paper helps me when I'm going to do some ink blending with distress inks, the regular ones. These aren't as forgiving as the oxide ones, but on this paper you really have a lot of wiggle room. You have some extra time to get the blending going because this paper keeps the ink on there a bit longer instead of soaking it up immediately. So this way you have a bit more wiggle room. So I'm starting with the Antique Linen Distress ink and I'm just adding it roughly all over this panel because I wanted this panel to have a soft brown look, and then from the outside I'm going to ink blend some darker browns, the brushed Corduroy and ground Espresso as well, keeping the center of each window a bit lighter. And so I'm going back and forth between these colors to get it right until I'm happy. And then also something that is really handy about this paper is that it can handle water. It cannot handle loads of water, but you can add easily some splatters without your paper already going to waste or just handling it badly. So that's also why I'm using this paper, because I already knew beforehand that I wanted to splatter a bit on top of this. So therefore I just smoosh the two darkest colors on top of an acrylic block, adding a bit of water, and then I will splatter everything around using a paintbrush. Once that's done, I'm going to lay this panel aside to dry, and then later we will come back to this panel to do the sentiment. So for the coloring, I have this wreath from the Winter Wreath stamp set by My Favorite Things. It came out a while ago, but well, I only recently got it, so I really wanted to use it. So this card maybe isn't as colorful as a card that normally is made during spring season or anything, but it's still winter. And well, I had this one color combination that I will use later on for the red accents of all these elements. And just because I wanted to use that one, I decided to go for these colors. Now, as you see, this wreath, I didn't stamp it completely. Why? Because I'm not going to use it as a circle. I'm only going to use the part where there are leaves and all the other elements. I don't need a completed circle for this card. So that's why I just stamped it here, because otherwise there wasn't enough space between my wreath and my foxes when I needed to die cut. So I have my first green combination, which is only two colors. When the images are this small, I don't think it's necessary to have a huge variety of Copic markers to help you color everything in. It's so tiny that it will barely be noticeable if you use 5 or even 2. It's just small enough to use 2 or even just 1 if you want to keep it simple. So these smaller leaves I'm giving just a slightly lighter green color combination. And I'm not doing anything fancy, as you see, just really quick and easy coloring here. But we need it. Also, I colored exactly 3 wreaths like this, so I'm showing you one, but I made 2 more for my original idea. In the end, it ended up a bit different because my original idea wasn't working, but I colored those without filming because it's just repetitive stuff. So if you're making a card like this or you're doing repetitive things, I just prefer doing the same things just when I'm sitting and watching TV on the couch. So that's why you will see one here, but I did exactly the same on all the others. So I'm almost done with this wreath for the berries. I'm using my three reds or red violets that I'm going to use for my mushrooms as well, and that's actually why this whole color combination started and the brown card idea came into place, because I just wanted something to fit with this color combination. So you will see me using these three markers again later on. Also, the mushrooms, I also did a few more just because with these small accents on my cards, I actually never know where or how many or if I need them. So I just prefer taking a few more when I'm coloring, because I don't like to color afterwards. I prefer doing coloring at once, then doing all the ink blending, then adding everything. I don't like it when I need to re-stamp things afterwards because there is something missing. So I prefer just do things for certain, and better to have more items than you need than to have not enough items. So these two foxes are getting the same colors. You can go towards the orange tones when you're coloring foxes. In my opinion, you can also do gray, you can do brown, you can do anything you want. There are so many types of foxes all around the world, so actually you just do whatever you want. In this case, for this card, to match with all the browns and such, I did a color combination that I like. It's a bit of a reddish brown in my opinion, and that's all because of the E18 and E15. But then the other E's that I'm using, like E33, E51, E53 as well, those are quite brown just. But it's a combination that really helps. The other fox is also going to get the same color combination, but because of the positioning of the fox, I decided to keep the coloring in this video because it might be helpful. Also, what you saw me doing here, well, I prefer to clean my images if I went outside the lines using the colorless blender. Now, with reddish tones and purples, I often have the issue that the Copic marker that I'm using, or that is inside the image, still tries to run out although I use the colorless blender. Now, I noticed that if I heat set the area where I use the colorless blender, that it dries quicker and leaves less room to bleed out again. So that's why you just saw me using my heat gun. But it's something that I think works. Maybe it's not at all the case, but well, I just do it. Definitely when I have some reds or browns. Yeah. So this one fox is already finished. So onto my final image that I'm showing you today. The same colors, E18, E15, E33, E53 and E51. Now I also have written down all the colors from the Copic markers onto my blog post. It's a bit much to put all down below in the supply list, but I will link towards my blog post in the description box if you want to know which color combination I used for which image. That's just handy. I listed it there for each image. So I'm working my way on this final fox. I already said it a few times. I'm using the Transotype Perfect Coloring Paper. This paper allows me to add more layers if necessary. Now I also need at least 2 layers when I'm using this paper, so I'm doing that here, and I also find it that it really helps me to get that blend between the E15 and the E18. In the beginning it looks a bit rough, but once I start on the second layer, I think it's such a huge difference. So if you don't like the blend, you just go over it once more, or you start flicking. That can always help you with the coloring of your image. A bit of fixing up. Today I had like a coloring day where everything went wrong in terms of going outside the lines. I didn't have a steady hand today, but in the end with my colorless blender I'm just fine. I can do it. I can remove what is excess, and if that's not working, I can start over with coloring. That's no problem. It's annoying, but it's not a problem. But really, I'm so grateful that I have the colorless blender. It was one of the first markers that I had, because I bought like the W marker set, which is including the colorless blender, so that was handy. But it really helped me to keep going with Copic markers. It's not always as easy when you're starting to learn how to color with Copic markers. So I'm using the matching dies to cut everything out, and then I will show you how I created this wreath without the line that is running through. So I just use my scissors and I try to follow the white outline of the rest of the image. And this way I cut off the black line that was excess, and then I took a white jelly roll pen and I just colored in that black line that was on the edges, because that's not what you want to show necessarily. So that's what I did, and I thought I needed this 3 times, but then later on you will see it's not working. It's not working at all. So onto my sentiment. Now this panel completely dried. I'm going to do some gold heat embossing. So I'm first prepping this window using my anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to stamp out this sentiment Miss You with my Versamark clear embossing ink, and I will use my NUVO classic gold embossing powder. It's currently the only gold embossing powder that I have, but I have ordered another one. But I really like this gold embossing powder. If you have a fine script, I wouldn't suggest it, because it is quite large, the size of the powder itself. But for this script, it was perfect. So before heat setting everything, I prefer making sure that my heat gun is already heated up. This also helps with less bulking and such from your paper. Like this. That is going to be my panel. And now here you can see I have these 3 wreaths, and if you use them all 3 completely, it's just too much. So I decided that I might be able to just trim off a few pieces. And then on the middle I didn't know, but in the end I ended up with a piece that I could use on my middle window as well. So that's what I did. So here I am using a pencil to mark where I want my wreath to stop. And then I will do exactly the same as I did previously to get rid of that black line, just trying to follow that white outline. And then I will use my jelly roll pen again to get rid of the excess black line at the end. So here on this one, I tried to do this, and I didn't like the way I fussy cut around the elements, so well, I cut a bit more off, because we can shorten it, nobody knows it, but this really wasn't working. So there the extra leaf is gonna go. And then again the white jelly roll pen. If you are going to cover maybe this part of the wreath where you cut it off, I don't think that you should use a white jelly roll pen, but I wasn't going to cover it, and I actually like the idea that this is an image just by itself and not just a part of an image that we cut off. So yeah. So I decided to use this part to help me get a bit of the wreath on the middle as well. And I just think that this way it's way better for the card design, because there is more space, more open space, but at the same time all the windows have the embellishment of a wreath. So that's what I'm doing. And then, as I said in the beginning, I have a few more mushrooms than I just showed you earlier. I'm going to make sure that this whole panel is fitting together by using those mushrooms all over. And then it's time to assemble everything. I'm not going to do anything fancy with the windows. I'm going to inlay them with some liquid glue. And then for the back, I am also using another die cut piece of the view from my window Slimline die. And this way there is a slight difference in height from the panel itself. Not that much, but this also helps a bit with dimension. So I'm just using one layer extra, adding it with some liquid glue, and then I'm going to add my panel on top of it. And then we can start adding all the elements. Now there are some elements that I really want to let it pop out of the frame, sort of, so those I'm going to tuck in. That's why I decided to use this tape roller. This way it's a bit easier, it's not as firm on there until you are really done with it. So I had some wiggle room to put everything inside of the creases where I wanted it to. And for all the elements, I'm doing a combination of liquid glue as well as some thin foam squares. So this wreath I'm going to pop up with some thin foam squares. The other wreath I'm going to add flat on there, just changing it up a bit, trying to keep it interesting all the way. The same for the foxes. One will be with some thin foam squares, the other ones will not be. And I just think these foxes are the cutest. Also Crafty Meraki has some cute foxes, really adorable. I used them already on a few cards and they are so playful and fun. So whatever foxes you have on hand can be used for this card. I think it's just amazing. I also saw these wreaths being used with some birds online by some amazing crafters. That's also an option to use these birds and the wreath on this card instead of using foxes. Any animal that you like actually would work. And if you want to, you can make this a really spring themed card as well, just using some lighter colors instead of the browns. You can really personalize this design to your own desires. And I think I really like that. So I'm just adding some glossy accents on top of the mushrooms. And for the rest, I am also adding it to the berries. All the red accents actually are getting a bit of glossy accents. But that will be it. I'm not going to add anything more to this card because there is already a lot going on with the wreath and such. And I want to keep it really elegant and simple at the same time. So that's why I limited myself, no embellishments, no more splatters, no stickles, just a bit of glossy accents. Well, this is my card. I truly hope that you enjoyed this video and of course the end result. If you like this card and the video, you can always give this one a thumbs up. We would truly appreciate it here. And I want to thank you all for stopping by. I hope that you have a wonderful day left and I will be back soon with some new inspiration. Bye!